We'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to come in. Please feel free to have your cameras on if you like as well too. We'll kick off in just a few minutes. All right, excellent. I might kick things off. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those of you in New Zealand as well too. And welcome to our MEMEX on developing successful business strategies, which we're holding in partnership with our very good friends at the Universal Business School, Sydney. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Ashley Rennison and I am Membership Manager at the Institute of Managers and Leaders. And it's my pleasure to be introducing today's session. I would like to begin by paying my respect and acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we're all meeting today, and also paying my respect to elders both past and present. Just some quick housekeeping before we kick off. If everyone could make sure that their microphones are set to mute, that would be great. Pardon me for 1 minute. And for the best viewing experience of the event, if you click on the view option at the top right of your screen and select speaker view, that will give you the view of the panelists as they're speaking and will give you the best viewing experience throughout the session. Please also feel free to keep your cameras on. We want this session to be as interactive as possible. And also, if you have any questions throughout the session as well too, please feel free to pop them into the chat box as well, and we'll get to as many as possible at the end of the session. We are really excited to have you all here with us for what I'm sure is going to be a really engaging and interesting discussion about strategy, which is a topic that I think, as we all know, is just as important as it's ever been, given the constant changing environment that we're all operating in and businesses are trying to adapt to. I am going to throw across to our panel host, Art Phillips, who is a fellow of the Institute and among many other things is the director of Universal Business School Sydney's Centre for Entrepreneurship. Thank you so much, Art.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for all the audience that have come in. And we appreciate the partnership that we have with IML, the Institute of Managers and Leaders, and this event. And I'm very much looking forward to it. As she said, I'm Adjunct Professor Art Phillips, Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship here at UBSS, also a fellow of the CFE and a fellow of the RCSR as well. Today's event, Developing Successful Business Strategies, is a really key important topic we felt, and that's why we devised such a event, because developing strong skill sets for leadership and making smart decisions are more imperative than ever, considering the changes that have happened throughout the global environment. Success in business requires strong intrapreneurial, entrepreneurial skill sets and actions. Risk-taking, commitment, courage, well-considered strategic plans are more vital than they probably ever have been before for long-term success, sustainability, and survival. So without further ado, first of all, just wanted to say we're actually broadcasting from UBSS TV, which is on Castlereagh Street here in Sydney, and we have 3 panelists, and I'm going to start by introducing our first panelist, who's sitting to my right, and that is Professor Wayne Smithson, and I'll have each panelist say a few words about their background, and then we'll move to the other 2 panelists. Wayne, thank you for coming.
Thanks very much, Art. Yes, my name's Associate Professor Wayne Smithson. I'm Associate Professor here at UBSS. I'm also had a previous in addition to my academic career, previous career with the commercial world, being a senior finance positions, most notably at Ernst & Young and Bank of New Zealand here in Australia. I'm also currently on 3 boards, one of which is the Institute of Managers and Leaders. I'm a fellow of the Institute of Managers and Leaders as well. So that about sums up my career today.
Well, fantastic. Thank you for being here, Wayne. I'm really excited with the level of expertise with all our panelists. And next, I would like to introduce who's offsite, Di Worrall. And Di, welcome. And I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. With my American accent, sometimes it gets a little bit fiddly with names, so I apologize. So thank you for coming, Di. Over to you. Just an intro. Thank you.
Great. Your pronunciation is perfect, Art. Thanks very much. Yeah, as you say, my name is Di Worrall. I operate in the space of business strategy, transformation, and change. So I can deliver my services in a number of different ways. One is on the ground, literally, which is in client offices, either developing strategy, leading the transformational execution part of strategy, or of course overseeing the change management side of things. I also intersect with business as a chair of advisory boards and governance committees. And I'm also an author, a business author. I write and I speak and deliver classes on the subject of leading change and transformation. And in particular, one of my threads of research that underpins my latest books is about accountability leadership in the workplace particularly. And during the pandemic, I must say, the popularity of that book has really taken off.
Well, that's great to hear. Congratulations on that, Di, and thank you for being a part of this event today. Much appreciated. And our third panelist, also offsite, is a fellow also of the Center for Entrepreneurship here at UBSS, and I'd like to introduce Lawrence Potter. Thank you. Lawrence, you want to do an intro of yourself? I appreciate it.
Thanks, Art. Yes, good morning, everybody, and kia ora to those in New Zealand, my homeland, which is a wonderful place to be. My background's slightly different to most of the others. It's probably a bit like Wayne. I've got a blend of both academic and commercial backgrounds. Having started out in retail with Woolworths way back in the 1980s, I wound up actually running a business consulting organization that we lead change, a bit like Di does, but we actually turn businesses around and take them internationally, basically. So help them to grow, and we work everything from how they actually do deliver those strategies right through to refining those strategies. And I think the biggest thing, that one of the things that we've learned in the last 36 months has really been is the fact of, if we're all doing Worrall, it's that 5-letter word of pivot has become an integral acronym for us to actually have to really deliver upon these particular days. And I think the way that we view strategy has become very different and really challenged to what we think about and how we apply it in today's environment, which is why this is such an exciting topic that Art's brought together here with Ashley. Which is terrific. On the other side, I do teach at I'm on the course advisory committee at UBSS as well, and I'm also a adjunct lecturer at Macquarie University and at University of Western Sydney, and I also teach some programs at a private college as well on marketing, management, and strategy. And in the spare time, I'm working through a PhD on disruptive change for the not-for-profit sector. So just trying to keep myself fairly busy. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Welcome, and appreciate your expertise here as well today. So we have all, of course, the key word is strategy here. So we have all sort of agreed and developed a key script of very strategic type questions, and a really good flow, we are hoping, in terms of the way that this all flows along. And the opening question, so I also wanted to say to everybody, this will go for about 35-40 minutes. At the end, we'll have about 10-15 minutes of Q&As from the audience. So please be free to ask anything that you'd like in the chat box, or just raise your hand at the end, and Ashley will pose the questions to us. So I'm going to open with our prologue, as we call it. And the prologue question is, and I'll focus this question towards Di. That'd be a great way to start, I think. So Di, from your experience and expertise of over 25, 30 years in what you are doing, what are some of the key challenges that you would think managers and leaders have in setting a balanced and sustainable strategy?
Okay, thanks, Art. In answering that question, I'll look at two different threads. The first one is pretty fundamental, foundational. It's around the process that we either do or don't use to derive balanced strategy. And the second thread that I'll move on to is about the definition of balanced strategy and how, in fact, that's changing, especially over the last several years in our current fast-paced environment. Turning my attention to that first point about how we actually set balanced strategy, the techniques we use, I'll look to a pretty common experience that I've had when I meet up with clients to deliver transformation, who have purportedly already come up with some sort of a balanced strategy. I'll say balanced in inverted commas. And I find that there's some habits, potentially some bad habits, that can permeate from programs ranging from a $2 million transformation program through to an over $1 billion transformation program that I was engaged to oversee. And I'll map it out for you. It goes something like this. We've got some senior leaders who assume that everybody knows what mission and vision is. They then go out and see what's going on in the internal and external environment. We might get a bit of SWOT analysis in there, and they come up with some great ideas as to what would comprise strategy. Then they go after launching some strategic initiatives. Then they decide they need to communicate those strategic initiatives to the business, so they do a bit of backpedaling, some retrofitting. Let's see if we can get some lovely strategic themes to match those lovely ideas we came up with. And let's top it off by putting on some performance measures and objectives to make sure everybody knows what they're doing. Okay, a couple of little problems with this particular approach. I think I find that there's some significant analysis that's actually missing. So what you get with fast tracking through strategy development like this are a couple of hiccups, a couple of blind spots. For example, down the track, your vision probably is not agreed by all and is not very clear. You get a whole stack of projects that are a great list of wishes, hopes and dreams, but they don't necessarily relate to each other. So their interdependencies aren't particularly clear. So we've got a whole range of pet projects. We've got strategies that are being pursued in silos. They're not relating to each other as far as the portfolio is concerned. We're overlooking strategic risks and opportunities. And then, of course, we institutionalize these silos in measurements and objectives. So, as I said, I've seen this from $2 million projects to over $1 billion type projects. So, it's not all doom and gloom. There are some of our basic tools that I find that I can put in place to help address those assumptions that have been missed, those assumptions that actually tell us what a balanced strategy is. So from a non-balanced strategy going all over the shop, there's some of my favorite go-to tools. Of course, we've got the balanced scorecard. The old chestnut, the balanced scorecard is there to create balance, and we've had that around for a long period of time, and to create balance across, your classic, financial objectives, your customer, your internal processes, and your learning and development objectives. So that's a great tool, and can be applied really quite simply as a check. I've been also gravitating towards the business model canvas recently. I've really enjoyed that, especially as a visual tool, where you can actually clarify and visualize for business what the different elements are, what the 9 different elements are that actually fundamentally create value and how they link together. The strategy map, of course, is a bit of an icing on the cake because it shows you some of the cause and effect relationships. And of course, one of my new personal favourite as I'm delving into the digital transformation space are readiness tools, readiness assessment tools. There's some really nice ones that I've seen from some of the larger consulting houses like Deloitte's, for example, that I can use as a test to see whether or not this is balanced and whether there's any holes in the strategy. So that's that first side of things as far as the process that we actually use. On the second half of the equation, what does balanced strategy actually look like nowadays? And how is that changing? How's the definition of balanced strategy actually changing? And I'll go for a bit of a list, if you like, of my top 7 that have been crossing my path just recently. And the top 7, and they're not small changes, they're really quite profound, and they're driving a lot of reason why I've been brought back in recent months to review strategies midstream. So the first one, looking at how we actually define the length of strategy, short, medium versus long term. I'm finding that our medium to long term strategies have really been challenged in our current fast environment. And it's not just a fast environment, it's a VUCA environment. VUCA meaning volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. So we're needing to make decisions in a much shorter time frame. And but we need to balance that with what does need to remain strategically long term. For example, infrastructure considerations need to remain long term, and also it's really important in this environment to anchor this volatility within understood and agreed vision and mission. Strategy, the way we balance it out using, say, a balanced scorecard, is also under a lot of scrutiny, modification and addition. Whereas, the original scorecard was certainly, we had our top line financial objectives that seemed to overlay a lot of the other different objectives. But nowadays we're seeing equally important and other objectives in the sustainability space, as you mentioned, Art. As sustainability, we can define it as people, profit, planet, or some of the more contemporary definitions of ESG, environment, social, governance. And I say that they're not necessarily add-ons, not like back in the day, sustainability was almost a token addition for your marketing strategy. Now they're becoming commercial imperative and, of course, part of compliance requirements. So huge elevation in that space. I'd add to my list the elevation and rise of the customer experience in transforming how we view our strategic and how we balance our strategies. But I'd also add some businesses are going down the pathway of the employee experience. So elevating the importance of these two elements in balancing out our strategy. And the last one, a personal favourite, is the rise of digital in our strategies. And that's digital strategy beyond the traditional IT plan and into how digital can in fact transform the business model as we know it. So that's my top 7, and I have a sneaking suspicion that some of that will be expanded upon by my colleagues in subsequent conversations.
Yeah, really quite informative. Yeah, thank you. So those 7, so it's really interesting because I guess the most important thing is to find out, from your customers and also from your employees, what the situation is and where change could occur. So surveys, I guess, are an important factor in much of this in terms of helping the CEO or the GM decide where the strategies should be sitting in terms of change for the future. Isn't that right? I guess that would be the most important thing that one would have to do. Yeah. Wayne, so same question. You want to add to this?
The only thing I'd add there, and I agree 100% with what Di is saying. I mean, the concept of ambidexterity, in particular for managers and leaders within the organisation, not just at the top of the organisation, being able to understand the future horizon with the current, and balance that with the current needs of your customers and your employees to that extent, is actually quite important. The only one I'd add to that is that at the start of this process, I'd be looking at saying that you know, dare to disrupt your own business. This is the biggest challenges for leaders in the organisation, is to go out there and actually challenge your own business, the core of what you do, to develop a strategy that becomes one of being very agile rather than, if you like, static. And that speed that Di mentioned as well should be filtering all the way through the organisation in terms of being able to understand what a strategy is and what it means, and be able to communicate quickly back up to the leadership. Because as I think one of your countrymen once said, no plan survives its first encounter with the enemy. I think it was MacArthur who said
I think
that.
it was there, yeah.
So if you put that into context of the competitor, then or competition and environmental factors, then it's quite pertinent.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is, I mean, I guess identifying what could be a strategic, smart change is one of the key factors. So I guess my next question, which I'll pose to Wayne, actually, is what actually triggers this? What actually triggers can you share that would drive you to think and to reshape and to formulate what you're planning on doing?
Well, I mean, triggers these days, I suppose, are signals and red flags to us. Once again, looking at your competitive horizon and making sure that if there's a potential disruptor, you want to be the disruptor in the industry, not be the disrupted. And as a result of that, you should be looking quite widely across the horizon. The digital world comes into this because it's all built on information. And that information shouldn't be left solely to those people at the let's say the top of the organisation. That should be fairly well coming through at all levels, and being able to assess what that means is a critical skill for managers and leaders throughout an organisation, in my opinion. So something in the toolkit there is to be able to get the information as quickly as possible. And it's nearly changing on a daily basis. I think Jeff, I think Bezos from Amazon.
Yeah.
His idea of strategy was to say to everybody, basically, treat today as day one, every day, and look at it from that perspective. So, and that is the challenge for managers, I believe, and leaders in these days, is to actually be able to live up to that and challenge the status quo with the information and the digital information that's now richly being harvested. But remember, sometimes we suffer from the concept of big data here, and too much data, if not turned into information, is difficult to make decisions with.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, it's interesting that you say that. And, also interesting that you actually sort of mentioned Jeff Bezos, because the story goes, I mean, how smart was he with the strategy? The original name for Amazon was not Amazon. It was a company called Cadabra, like abracadabra, which is magic, And Jeff and his team decided to change the name early on because of the fact that his attorney was referring to something in a board meeting, and he said, so this new company called a cadaver, which means a dead person. Jeff said, no, it's not cadaver, it's Cadabra. And they realized right there and then that very strategically, I mean, this goes down to the basic form, that's not a good name. So they decided on Amazon, which is a very smart name because it's the biggest river and, and huge jungle. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there as my little 2 cents. But Yeah.
No, that's once again, it's those are the type of things that need to be thought about, not just at the senior level within the organisation, but should be throughout the organisation. And as Di was saying quite correctly, I mean, it's the communication of that down through the organisation and their ability to react to these things on a daily basis. It can become quite important to the entire organisation to move as one, if you like.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I guess there should be no secrets within a company, and transparency is really important with the employees, etc. So I'll focus this next part to Lawrence, actually. So Lawrence, so with your skill set in terms of you have a strategic management consulting firm, and you have had a lot of experiences, etc. So how do you identify or suggest to the clients that you're working with to identify, what triggers makes you actually move? What triggers actually makes you realize there has to be a change? Anything that you could actually add to that from
I actually think that there's been a number of challenges that have occurred in the last, especially in the last 3 years, that have been very, very deliberate. One, I think we now need to spend some real proper time doing strategy planning. I think we've taken the fact that staying with the Amazon part, if we're Amazon Prime, I can get this all sorted out within 24 hours and get it delivered to me, right? Strategy takes time. It takes commitment, and it takes people to actually do and ask the right questions. I think the biggest thing that I find is that people are too scared to ask the real questions as to what the problem is. My background, as I say, business development, sales, marketing, and strategy. I don't think I've ever gone into a job where one of my clients has ever said to me that they've got a sales problem. They've got a financial problem, they've got a profitability problem, they've got a product problem, whatever it might be. But bottom line is, you've got to ask the right questions and ask the right aspects as to what the actual underlying parts are. And that's where Di is very correct, is, well, maybe some of those people on the team aren't the right people or the right resources or are the right skills that are required to drive that. The second part about instantaneous responses, and if we take the Hofstede type of model with the 6 cultural dimensions, and this is the latest one here, about instantaneous, about fulfillment, speaking straight away, is the fact that we've got theorists out there and strategists out there like Auger and Tees talking about the fact of sense and seize opportunities. Well, yes, that's great, and it makes a short-term gain, but it can create long-term pain. If we're not actually sensing and seizing or doing the right things in the right type of manner, we can run into problems which just then confound themselves down the track. I got a classic scenario where one of my clients he's had, I'll say 15 different business experts point out the very same problem to him, and he still won't deal with that particular issue. Bottom line is, he knows what the strategy is, he knows what he has to do, he just doesn't want to do it. Well, predominantly because it costs money to make that part happen. But bottom line still got to be, it's a situation, well, why do people start to avoid how to deal with strategy in a real way? And I suppose, building on what Di was saying, my favorite would be Mintzberg, right? His planned, his emergent, and his realized strategy approach, right? And I think today, more than anything, we have to understand the process around emergent forces and developments. And if we're not aware of what's going on in the environment around us, we will not be able to respond. It requires us to have a different dynamic and skills that are out there today of looking at what I call different market orientation. So understanding, as Di said, about the learning orientation, the customer orientation, your competitor orientation, the market structure, government orientation in its involvement in the marketplace, and looking at how we have to therefore develop and create a point of value proposition that sets us apart and can become a truly sustainable competitive advantage that is able to be leveraged in the market effectively. So I don't think it's an easy thing for us to do, but what I do think we are finding more and more deliberately is that if we need to ask the right questions, and you know, as Simon Sinek would say, we've got to ask the question of why. Start with the question of why. Why is this the issue, and where is this going to lead us and to take us, and therefore how do we respond to building those type of strategies around that aspect? We can learn an awful lot from a lot of others in the market, but how we then adapt and apply and utilize those in our environment become important processes for us to consider. And I think the biggest thing that in that area for us has to be looking at the utilization of what resources we actually have inside our organization, understanding our capabilities and competencies, and therefore what we are good at and what we're not good at. Doing the things that we are good at and outsourcing those things that we're not that good at, and working with others to help supply and support those particular areas. So they can make some real changes. Yeah,
a change is a really interesting thing for businesses, because when things are going perfectly well, you think, you know, I mean, it's a smooth sailing ship and it's a really nice sort of level playing field, but then of course something's always going to come up. There's going to be a disruption of some sort, or some challenge to face. So right, the bottom line is I guess you know, sort of accountability, which is one of your expertise, because with your book, and congratulations on your great sales on that. But you know, I mean, accountability in terms of being able to, you know, identify a situation and even pre-identify a situation, such as, for example, the pandemic. I mean, that's just one thing that we've all had to face in the world. I mean, not just businesses, but people in general. That certainly was, you know, a change that we've all had to face. What factors do you think companies, or you would have advised companies, to sort of consider or take on board to ensure smooth sailing for the future once a disruptive situation happens, like the pandemic?
Interesting. Ensuring smooth sailing for the future. I mean, one of the I guess the great truths nowadays in the change space is that you know, we need to really take a shift in our mindset about what change means. I know we're talking about disruptive change, interrupting and upsetting business, but I think a lot of lessons from that have told us that some of our systems are not fit for purpose. If we can't pivot, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, if we can't pivot quickly enough, the environment's not necessarily changing. We're the ones who need to change our internal systems and our responsiveness and agility. So things like new developments in the world of agile work. And I'm not necessarily saying put, you know, agile project management through your business. I'm talking about more of the mindset and the attitude towards being responsive and agile, and as Lawrence pointed out, you know, really deep diving into strategy is an important thing, but also the flexibility the flexibility and openness and willingness to actually check on your own judgment on a more regular basis. I think being adept and agile for the future is also about building continuous improvement into your system. So it's not just, oh, we're doing an improvement process, but actually building it in. And if you can't do it yourself, like in the not-for-profit space, Lawrence, some of the people I work in that space are quite small. They don't necessarily have the resources. So partnerships are incredibly important. So in opening up your heart and mind, and also your risk management strategies to what it means to have extra partnerships to help you get done what you need to get done, because you just don't necessarily, we're not all Amazon. We just can't command a resource at a moment's notice, but nevertheless, we still need to respond very quickly. And I guess one of the other, a thread that's coming through here that actually helps, we're talking about accountability and what are the things that actually help make accountability happen. And in my mind, accountability is, I I promote positive accountability, not the punitive accountability, which is the stick approach and the measures that force people to do things. It's more of the positive accountability that creates the systems and the will to actually deliver and deliver ahead of the game and want to contribute and want to engage in continuous improvement. And something I think we've all touched upon at the moment, which tends to be a bit of a taboo subject, and I'm sure all of us in strategy have faced this one, is how do you have those hard conversations with your most significant, senior and powerful employers, clients? It's actually very difficult because that's a skill set in its own right. So for the facilitators, in-house and external facilitators in this forum, it's a really interesting question. It's something that I've had some interesting exposure to at interesting levels, right from the front line through to renegotiating strategy and visions and propositions with, I remember one of the circumstances, I had 7 chief executives in a room across 7 organisations and a minister trying to get together to find some commonality over a group strategy. Interesting stuff, I can tell you, but there's ways and means of doing it. And if we draw on some of our theory around how you can do it, you know, people like David Rock and his SCARF model of collaboration are fantastic insights to actually draw from on how you actually engage people who have different power imbalance. So engage people at the leadership level, but also open up that conversation, as Lawrence was referring to, on how do you actually get that collaboration through the business? How do you actually get people to challenge you rather than not challenging the power position in the room? So interesting stuff.
The psychology of it all is really, really sort of always understated, because a leader, a GM or CEO, has to really know how to work with people and to always give that positive sort of aura and take things on, I guess, because if they don't, they're always going to have backlashes and it's not going to be a transparent, friendly environment. And I guess it's, like Wayne, I guess it's the importance of actually trusting the people that you hire to help you get to the stage where you would like to make this change with a strategic move. So if you could speak to that a little bit, because I think that's really an important little aspect.
That's a perfect question, because at the end of the day, this is the crux. The middle, the management group within any organisation are the linchpin of any strategy for the implementation and the communication of that strategy. So being able to have those conversations, be them hard or be them positive in their positive nature, they are critical to having the strategy flow down through the organisation. And I think one of the other things I'd like to just add to this is that the strategy is something that, given the things that in our life at the moment, it's not something that we should be doing every year. It's nearly something we should be doing nearly every day, dare I say. And it's not so much doing the full strategy blowout and plan, but do it in a microcosm at levels within the organisation. So those skills that for our managers and leaders throughout the organisation are quite important, so that they can we can be agile, we can pivot quickly as an organisation. And I think that's something that I think companies will start to do more and more. I suppose you call it a micro strategy meeting on a nearly, I won't say daily basis, but it nearly requires that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that sort of states the importance of actually this word transparency, as we said, to have these group meetings once a week or whatever, and not just waiting for a horrible situation to happen to make a change. One of the things that Mark Zuckerberg has always said that I quote a lot is, don't be afraid of failure. If something goes wrong or a mistake that you made, that's how you'll learn, and that's how change is evoked from those sort of situations. Yeah, Lawrence. Lawrence, how do you feel about the fact that, when the pandemic occurred, how would you coach? I mean, every company is different, and every company had a different way forward in terms of thinking, how are we going to survive? What was your key factors that you may have considered advising to other companies when this pandemic happened?
Yeah, look, I think initially it was a bit like everybody. It was a bit of a scramble. It was a bit of a scramble race. Just get, do whatever you can to keep the doors open, to get things going as you started to re-find your feet and some clarity around different aspects. And we did everything from a lot of organizational behavior type activities, whether they're Kahoot sessions online, stuff like that, building team morale, getting engagement, stuff like that. But I really think that the biggest issue and the most important aspect really was about building the trust and relationships across people, and to be able to continue the fact that that strategy, even though the pandemic hit, for example, in this particular case as a major disruptor, it was a refinement element, not a reorientation element for what we needed to do, right? So, and a good example of that, I would say, is what I've noticed with, if you look at the Woolworths advertising on TV at present, right? Woolies still advertise being the fresh food people, but they don't advertise as much about, hey, Art, come and shop in store. They say, Art, why don't you come and do click and collect, because we do that really, really well. And people have embraced a brand new way of still engaging with Woolworths, getting the fresh food, knowing the service, getting the quality, and they've adapted the business accordingly, right? You'll notice they haven't promoted as much their online business in terms of getting it home delivered, stuff like that, because there's always been the backlash about paying for delivery fees. But the fact of click and collect has worked really, really well. So getting people's engagement across the board has been important. Now, why did that strategy work so well? Is because they did the same thing with all their staff. They go and pick the quality of the product. They ask questions of, you want 4 bananas. When do you want the bananas for? I want two for the next couple of days, and I want the other 2 for later in the week. So great. So we can pick and do things really deliberately, right? So we want to be very, very specific about what it is we need to do. And I think the adaptability aspect here had to become, and from a strategic perspective, become more communicative. But the problem I think we've found is, and Di mentioned it, and there has been an employee backlash about a sense of entitlement and a sense of ability to work from home and stuff like that, and not to be engaged. There's been those challenges of, I think we've been in a reality of our team's commitment and our trust to our teams to actually be able to work together. Unfortunately, I must admit, I've seen that at the leadership team level, where certain of the senior leadership managers are erring on the side of the staff as opposed to actually leading the business, which is a real challenge and a problem in itself. And I think that's been one of the biggest issues for most, especially business owners, to get some real challenges with.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, a pandemic for a lot of companies, including my own, I found a way to actually sort of survive in a different way than I would have ever thought. And now I have a new part of my business because of the pandemic. So, I think it's important that we always look for a positive outcome from a disruptive situation. I think that's really, really important.
I 100% agree. I've had one of my clients, the business grew by 40%, and because of the needs of what they supply. But other ones, costs went through the roof, like we get with freight, for example. So you have to adapt.
All that, yeah. So, Wayne. So, the old-fashioned word, once again, that the word that we keep using is the word disrupt. Yeah. As an executive, right, how would you advise a CEO to be comfortable with having to disrupt their own business against the so-called, what's the word, status quo, I guess? Yeah, that's a scary prospect, isn't it?
It is a scary prospect, and I mean, we've had the typical examples in the past of, and I'll quote one of the ones that I use quite frequently, and that's Kodak, where they actually, one of their employees invented the first digital camera, but failed to take it to market because the leaders and the board decided that people wanted actually photos that they could actually touch and feel, where, well, that wasn't the case. And also the second issue, of course, was a complacency issue. And I think this is one of the things that, from a manager's and leader's perspective, if you get into that comfort zone, that's a dangerous zone. Yeah, that's a very dangerous zone to be in. The boards that I'm at the moment are always stress testing the strategy on a fairly regular basis to make sure that we're not ignoring opportunity due to our own complacency. And it becomes one of making sure that, you know, as we go along, and this is why I say the frequency of the review of the strategy and at all levels of the organisation should be undertaken, and what it actually means to their section within the organisation, or their accountability, as Di is saying. So yeah, I think that that's where a lot of companies at this stage need to actually just take it to another level and say, yes, we're going to disrupt, because really, when you disrupt something, you turn it into a bit of a crisis, and that's what we saw with the pandemic. But out of all crises, if you search and scratch the surface, there's an opportunity. Yeah. And be able to seize that opportunity, and if it does mean disrupting your business, then we should be grabbing it with both hands as leaders within the organisation.
Well, that's right, because the word challenges. So, you know, sort of challenging your own success and status quo, because things will not remain the same. There's just no doubt about that. And so, yeah, so Di, so, geez, I mean, I guess the question really is, you know, I mean, I'm going to be a novice here because it's not my department, but how do you advise companies how to look out for something that they need to be aware of or thinking about? How do you find and sift through all this in the big tunnel of corporate thinking?
Well, look, I'll go to a very recent example of that. And again, I was working in a not-for-profit space reviewing strategy, and I had the opportunity to do it several times. And one was a little bit like Lawrence, with the big, you know, right in the midst of the disruption of the pandemic, but then a little while later on, once things had started to settle down, so they'd moved from, you know, panic button through to recovery, I guess. So, I found there are certain things that I did and that I recommended to help open their eyes to opportunity. But I also found that a critical part was essentially, I was working with the board, was what their appetite for risk was to start with. And I had a really good opportunity to actually have a look at the market they were operating in. And it happened to be an interesting microcosm of their industry. There are 4 or 5 of these different organisations, and they were largely homogeneous, I'd have to say, around about the same size, etc. And things had been pretty good. They had similar, almost identical funding models. They did a little bit of innovative activity around the fringes, but essentially they were relying on government funding. They offered the same service. They were given a certain component of a market that they could serve. So hence you just got these operators all doing pretty well the same thing. The one that I was actually working with had a distinctly different appetite. That had some members, new members of a board and a new president, and they actually wanted to actually push the boundaries a little bit. But in order for them to do that, they also, that was great, but then they also needed to understand the risks of what they wanted to look for and the different possibilities. So yeah, I did some classic strategy work for them, which was having a look at the different market opportunities and pushing the boundaries, and they had some great ideas as well. but to help them actually understand and digest that information, I suggested that there was also an opportunity for ongoing learning on their part, and also on the part of senior leadership. So it just wasn't a one and done event, which is I'll do a strategy review for you. Here's the information at a particular point in time. The environmental dynamic and the new overlay was digital I did business transformation, then I put a whole new perspective as far as digital transformation was concerned. And they were interested in digital. They were interested in sustainability strategies, particularly in the area of transport. They were a transport provider, and hooking them up with regular information and briefings from experts that would keep them appraised of developments really did help build not only their capability, but also the capability to understand what was going on, and then of course make better decisions because they had more information. Yeah. And it wasn't, interestingly, a matter of what some people do, which is you bring in an expert to try and bridge the gap, because everybody needed to, all the different leaders and managers needed to participate in this. So ongoing learning. And, you know, whether it was management, whether it was staff, but in particular the decision makers and the board participating in briefings and ongoing learning. And in some cases with senior management getting into the immersive side of learning, where they get to experience something on the front line, you know, going out and you know, working with clients directly, for example. So yep. I think, yeah, it was the learning side of things that actually then helped build understanding and make better strategies when reviews do come along.
Well, that's right. Well, I guess it's all about bringing everybody, all the experts that a company hires to take care of their departments, the team, so to speak. They all have to be aware of all the aspects of what one should be thinking to make the change, you know, because it's really all about, to sort of encapsulate all this, I guess it's all about, you know, risk, looking at sales, how one can increase that. Of course, as Lauren said, you know, I mean, it's just not a finance issue. It goes back to sales, because if sales is better, and if the cost of sales is more cohesive to a good result, that's going to help the bottom line, right? The net profit, the gross profit. So there's all these things to think about. So I guess really, you know, it's probably about time for Q&A. I saw some questions coming up. The real key sort of takeaways, I guess, for today is, I mean, if I could just sort of go around the panel and, you know, everybody just contribute to 2 words or short phrases of what the key takeaways are. And I'll start, if that's okay. The first thing that I think is that being transparent within your own organization and making sure that you know, there's a transparency and a trust with all of the teams that are involved in the way your company is run, is my real sort of thinking in terms of takeaway. Wayne, what would you think?
I'd add to that the words dare to disrupt.
Dare to disrupt, yeah.
I think that's a key element yeah. to I suppose put the crises first and make it happen, and be aware of how agile you are against those particular those disruptive scenarios. And the second is being able to manage that fear of failure that in many cases are linked to rewards systems within our companies now, that be able to celebrate the failures, because you'll learn and learn from those and take them into the business. So.
You know, yeah, good, fantastic. So we're going to have these key takeaways in point form, and we'll publish a bit of this as well at the end. So Lawrence, how about you? So in terms of a couple key takeaways from our chat today.
Look, I think for me, it's about agility and adaptability. Today, I think that's being aware and being present in the moment and working in that environment.
Yeah, no, great. Thanks, Lawrence. And Di.
A bit of a theme here. I was going to say responsiveness, which is a similar theme, but I'll throw a different one in, collaboration.
Yeah. A trust with the people that you work with and being able to collaborate in an efficient manner. Yeah, great. Of course. Yeah. Anything else?
I guess a phrase that comes to mind that builds on all these things is continuous learning.
Yeah.
So it's, it's the other side of, being not as shocked by disruption as a lot of us have been, is actually continual learning and responsiveness and adaptability and agility makes us more resilient.
Yeah, that's right.
To the onslaught of disruption, which is guaranteed.
Yeah. So entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs should never go to sleep. You should always be thinking, looking ahead, looking in the sheets of night and seeing what's behind that mountain, what's behind, what could just be around the corner, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So thank you to the panel, Di and Lawrence and Wayne. I think it's been a really fantastic chat. We could go on for another hour, but of course we won't. We have about 10 minutes left. Ashley, would you like to pose some of the questions that I've seen come up to one of the panelists?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Art. So we have one that's come through from Michael. Sorry, my voice is starting to go. Is building and applying a business transformational strategy top-down versus bottom-up situational? And how can one ascertain which approach is most appropriate?
Okay, we'll aim that to Wayne. You want to start?
Yeah, look, transformational in itself is normally a disruptive process anyhow. And I think there's no right or wrong way to do this from the top down or the bottom up. It's nearly situation by situation. I think the leaders have to take responsibility for the communication and the change management process. But they really have to, and we talk about collaboration, we really have to get at all levels of the organisation those people who are going to be advocates for change, and enlisting those people that are actually going to do the same and follow the same change that you want, but all the way through the organisation. It's not just a top-down or a bottom-up approach. I think if you don't do it that way, then you really don't get the buy-in that you need at all levels of the organisation, and as a result of that, the transformation, which is normally rather than just let's call it a major event that's going to happen, and it will be disruptive, then it's going to be a problem for getting the results you want. You may get some results, but if you don't go through that and get those coalitions, if you like, of success, I call them, then you're not going to be able to advance it and get to. You may have some transformation, but mightn't get to the strategy, to the end game that you're looking for.
Yeah, interesting. I guess company surveys within an organization is an important thing. Di, what do you think about that? Sort of asking your employees on a weekly basis with a survey or something. I don't know. Is that something that's recommended?
Look, yes, it is. And if you take a leaf out of some of the better strategies in employee experience nowadays, you can get a lot better result. So at times I caution a little bit about surveys. They haven't always had the best reputation, but as I said, with some of the new technologies coming along nowadays and the speed at which they can actually tap into the mood of the place, it can be incredibly impressive. So that's where some of those partnerships come in again, because the employee experience and tapping into that really quickly and not spending too much time digesting what employees have to say, so you can keep tabs on your strategy. But I guess I'd add a little bit to what was earlier mentioned by Wayne about tapping into the people inside your organisation, whether it's top down or bottom up. I think there's certainly a coordination element from the responsible people, those who are ultimately accountable for overseeing strategy. But as far as participation, there's so much. It's a wonderful opportunity to energise the talent within your organisation. I mean, just think of the natural strategists, the natural creatives, as well as, the natural change advocates. So it's a beautiful opportunity to actually, as you say, implement change at the same time as you do strategy by using a deliberately collaborative process. So it doesn't seem top down.
No, that's right. Yeah. I like what you said, because the word is beautiful, actually, that you actually sort of take it on that way, because it's all about the psychology of it all, right? If you make these people that are heading up your departments feel good and want to get their input, you'll get more out of them, I guess, is the bottom line. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It's all about people. It's all about making people feel good. You know, psychology, as we said. I think there's another question that we just saw come up. Ashley, you want to?
There is, yeah, thanks so much, Art. I'm going to try and paraphrase this a little bit. So, can you recommend a model or literature that can help guide how to bring senior leadership into the need for strategic planning? I think that's kind of the key crux of the question.
Okay. Would you like to go on that a bit, Lawrence? You want to address that?
Yeah, look, one of the people I do find quite inspiring on this type of topic is probably a guy called Simon Sinek. He wrote a book called The Infinite Game. And I think if we think about the fact of what type of business we are actually in and what type of strategy we're doing, whether it's an infinite strategy or it's a finite strategy. Obviously, finite, put it into the NRL type terms, guys, is, you know, the game plays for two halves. There's a time limit. It's 80 minutes. We get a winner or we get a loser, and that's it. Whereas if we haven't got the right strategy and we're playing in a market that's an infinite market, the game continues on, and we need to change our mindset and our strategies in terms of what we're actually doing. I do agree very heavily, though, with what Wayne and Di have said, though, is the fact of, in order to do that, you need to make sure you have your whole team on board with you. You can't afford people not to be committed, and you need to get that and embrace that in a very specific and deliberate way. So, without trying to say it's the strategy of the day, and that's one of the problems with a lot of changes happen in the past, is we've had flavors and ideas and concepts we've done where they've become real little pets. Bottom line is, we do need to understand the dynamics and the aspects of the areas we're working in with, and Di and I both work in areas which sound very similar. And one of the biggest things and learning process I've done in the last little while with that process of understanding strategy, especially at board level, is understanding the political behavior of what the board's doing, not just their risk for their attitude towards risk, but the motivations of the people on the board for what they want from that position and that role, and how they then orientate and can disrupt what they're doing, and having to work through that and getting that cohesion at the top. Because remember, we're about leading, and leading's taking people where they need to go, not necessarily where they want to be. I use the example in class when I do this bit, and I've walked Milford Track 6 times. Well, sorry, I tell a lie. I've completed Milford Track on the South Island 6 times. I've walked it once. Every other time, we've had to make adaptations and changes given avalanches, snowfall, flooding, everything else, in order to try and get our way through, right? So if you've got to take people through, and by the way, if things go wrong, things go very wrong, and people go out in helicopters, unfortunately. Yeah. So we have to be really deliberate and very careful about what we're doing and how we're playing it. But we also have to have a strategy based around the fact of, we are playing an infinite game, not a finite game. And we're taking finite actions in order to get an infinite type result. So we need to think our way through. Hopefully that's something. But yeah. Simon Sinek, pardon me, The Infinite Game is a great book and great read.
Well, that's good. I'm going to, actually, on the way out of here today, I'm going to go to the local bookshop and get it. And also, Di, your book sounds really interesting. Accountability Leadership. I haven't read that, and I'm also going to be looking for that. Is there anything that you can add to that that question from the participant? Di?
Just it reminds me of just the principles of facilitating, facilitating outcomes, facilitating agreement, facilitating alignment. As far as getting different groups of people together, some of the core principles you find in books from ProSci, ProSci methodology, which is classic change methodology that is permeating throughout the world. I mentioned a little bit earlier about how you actually get people to get into the room to start with, to get motivated enough to get into the room, and how do you actually facilitate a good strategy session using principles of, engagement and collaboration from a guy called David Rock. So there are two of the things that come to mind that a few of my go-to strategies when I want to actually get some strategic outcomes happening live. Yep.
Some good solid action. Yeah, that's the important thing, is to get people off their seats and sort of speaking and sharing and collaborating. Back to that word. Yeah, that's good. Ashley, we have another question. I think we have time for this one. If you'd like to read that one.
Yeah, we've had a couple come through. So for anyone who we haven't gotten to, we'll try and have our panelists, we'll try and gather some information from our panelists and send it back to you so that we can make sure that we are answering your question. But just finally, how important is senior leadership's willingness and enabling the organizational culture / internal environment to allow, to become a disruptor or to welcome change when things are going well? I hope that has made sense. Apologies. Did you want to throw that to one of our panel?
Yeah, can you just read the question again? Sorry, Ashley.
Yes, of course. How important is senior leadership's willingness and the enabling of organizational culture and internal environment to allow an organization to become a disruptor or to welcome change when things are going well?
Yeah, I guess the key word is the culture of the organization. And how about this change that, Wayne, you want to talk to that? Or?
Well, yep, I think the culture is the key word there, but so I understand the question, we're talking about culture starts at the top. So therefore, any change or any disruption has to be backed by the senior leaders in the organisation. And we go back to this idea of being able to, as Di said, to accept the risk and what risk appetite, and telling people where they can basically fail. There's a story, well, not a story, it's a real example, is that BMW have what they call the Failure of the Month Award, and which they give to they give to the flop of the month, if you like. They tried, they succeeded, but and it's a very coveted award that employees look to get. Why? Because what happens is that when they do fail, they actually learn from it.
Yeah. So
the cultural support here is that they're actually rewarded recognition. Key parts of any culture are there set by the leaders, and it is awarded by the leaders of the organisation, not for actually achieving something, but for actually failing at something. Yeah. Because then they know that the company is going to learn from that, or the organisation will put that into their next development.
I'm sure I could have been awarded a lot of flop awards in my life. Okay, well, I think we're at 12:38 and a half on the clock, and I'm just wondering, Ashley, do you think we should wrap this up, or would you like to say anything or ask one more question? It's up to you.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to thank our panelists on behalf of the Institute, and thank UBSS for partnering with us on this event. It's been fantastic. I hope everyone's enjoyed it, and we're looking forward to hopefully seeing you all at future events coming up. We'll be sharing the key takeaways from the session. So I'm in the post-event email as well as the recording. So if you have any questions or if there's anything that we can assist with after the session, feel free to get in touch with us.
Well, that's fantastic. I just wanted to thank all the participants, and in particular, I noticed that we have a couple of our UBSS alumni that have come on, which I'm really, really thrilled about that. So thank you for those students who have done that. And anyway, I hope everybody has a really, really good day. I wanted to thank Wayne very, very much, Di very, very much, and Lawrence. Just a really interesting session, I think. And as I said, we could have gone on for more. We're all hams here on the TV set and in the studio. So until the next time, we'll come up with another great concept between UBSS and IML as a partnership a seminar event. Anyway, have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Di. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Take care.